What's going on, guys? My name is Jordan Victorian. I'm a professional photographer based out of Houston, Texas. And today I'm doing a photo review on some of my recent photos I took at a 7-on-7 tournament in Waller, Texas. So this shoot was for the Cypress Elite 7-on-7 football team, and I was able to get some really good shots. It was my first time shooting 7-on-7 in a long time, but I think I did pretty good to say I was kind of rusty. And guys, the reason I'm doing these gallery reviews is because, for one, I want to track my progress as a photographer. Number two, I also want to take the time to review my work. And three, I also want to give some knowledge and information to people that might be learning, because I've only been doing this 2 years. I've learned a lot because I've been put in situations where I have to do this a lot, but there may be some people that could find value in these videos. And I do know a lot of people personally that like doing sports photography, so hopefully this can help them out. All right, so let's go over the equipment that I use. My camera that I use is a Sony a7 IV, and there's two lenses that I brought with me to this shoot, even though I primarily used one. The lens that I used the most throughout this tournament was the 70-200 2.8 Sony G Master lens. Since football is an outside sport, you really need that longer focal length to try to get some shots further down the field. Now with 7-on-7, the photographers are allowed on the field as long as they're not in the field of play. So you can get some really good shots that way. The other lens that I used mostly when I was in the end zone is a Sigma 24-70 Mark II 2.8. I didn't use that lens as much, but towards the end I did use it a little bit more. So this tournament was held at a big Texas high school stadium in Waller, Texas. Waller's about 45 minutes away from downtown Houston, and I was able to get some really good shots because it was during the daytime. So what I did was pick out 5 different photos from the tournament. I'm gonna explain my psychology behind how I shot them, why I shot them, what position I was in, and all that nice stuff, and hopefully we can learn something together. So this is a photo from when they were getting ready to start one of their games. So one thing about 7-on-7 is that it's a tournament, and most of the time they're exchanging fields like a lot. So they have to walk and transition from one field to another. In this shot, they were walking, I think, from one side of the stadium to the other side of the stadium. And the quarterback was throwing the ball. He was just tossing it to a teammate, and it came out for a really good shot. So I shot this photo with my 70-200 lens. I had the shutter speed at 1000. I had my aperture at 2.8 and I had my ISO at 64. The reason that the shutter was so high is because anytime you are doing anything with sports or with a lot of action, bare minimum, I'm not shooting sports lower than 640, but I try to keep it at around 1000 because when things are moving so fast, you don't want to get motion blur. So having that shutter at a higher speed will help you make sure that you could freeze the action a lot better. So when I shot this photo, I wanted to make sure, I like getting photos of them looking like a team and then there's just one person leading the pack. That's kind of what I was going for when I saw this big group of players walking together, and him throwing the ball just added an extra touch to that. Now, every time I'm shooting a photo, I'm trying to tell some type of a story. Now, if it's game time, I have to try to catch the action at the best point of time. But with something like this, I'm able to say, okay, what's the story that I can tell with this scene? And the story that I was able to tell with this scene is like, we're coming. The quarterback is usually the guy leading the team, so he's the one that's gonna be in front saying like, okay, I'm the one leading the pack. And then the motion of him throwing the ball just added a little something extra to it. So in this picture, the wide receiver is going up for the pass. He's mossing somebody. There's another kid looking onward, and it's a really good visual shot. For this one, I used my focal length I was using my 24-70. I was at 70 millimeters, so I was, as further back as I can. I was at a 1500 shutter speed. I was at my 2.8 aperture, and my ISO was at 100. The reason my ISO was a little bit higher was because when you're playing 7-on-7, everybody's on the same side of the field because you're only playing for 50 yards. And then usually there's another game going on the other side. What I was experiencing was that there was a lot of shadows for the team that I was shooting for on the side of the field that they were on. So in order to overcompensate for that, I turned my ISO up a little bit more. There is a thing called bracketing. I'm not really sure how to do bracketing yet, but it's supposed to, shoot 3 different images. One is underexposed, one is overexposed, and I think one is like in the middle. And the idea is that you can combine them together. I don't know how to do that yet, but that would have been something really good that we could have done right there. So in this area, you had some spots that were very dark, and you had some spots that were very lit up a lot. So there's 2 types of focus modes that I use a lot when I'm doing photography, and that is zone and that is center fix. So what I was trying to do for this tournament was use center fix a lot more often, so I could because what center fix usually does is make sure that you are zoomed in on the center of the photo or the center of the frame. So there's two strategies that I usually use when I'm shooting sports. I use the strategy of tracking the action, or use the strategy of tracking the player. So for me personally, tracking the action usually can make sure that you're in the area where the action is happening. But because sports is happening so fast, it's kind of hard to make sure that you're able to focus and get everything in frame. Because I've tracked the action a lot of times and there was things that were out of frame, there were things that were out of focus, and that's no good. Now, tracking the player, it really helps me get good focused images. It really helps me get things that are aligned and put in the right spot. But the problem is, if the main play doesn't go to that player that you're tracking, then you've missed out. Now, you can do a lot of tracking the player if you're doing something specifically for one person, but if you're doing something for a team, then it's a little bit harder to do that. So let's get into this next photo. I do want to talk about when you're shooting sports. This is something that I heard in a YouTube video a long time ago. This guy was talking about when you're shooting sports, you should always try to get safe shots. In every single sport, there are safe shots. So for football, a few safe shots that you can get is pre-play, when everybody's lined up waiting for the referee to snap the ball. So the receiver in his receiver stance, the quarterback waiting for the ball to be hiked to him, the running back in his stance, any cornerbacks, any linebackers in their stance, any linemen with their hand in the dirt. Those are all safe shots. It's highlighted because it was 7-on-7 and because of the position that I was in. I think I was in the end zone when I took this shot, but I was able to get the player's face. And that is something that a lot of photographers need to make sure you understand. If possible, I know you can't always do it in sports. It's not always the easiest thing to do in sports, but try your best to get the player's face, all right? So I know it's really easy to get their backs, but you don't want to see someone's backs unless you're creatively trying to shoot a picture where you're getting their back. Maybe you want to get their jersey or you want to see some type of action. The main thing that you should be trying to get is their face, all right? So at any time when you can, try to get in a position where you can get their face. But this is one of the safe shots of the receiver in his receiver stance, all right? Now, I'll admit it's not the most flashy picture, but it is something that you can add, especially if you're doing something for one person. Some safe shots might be good to add to your gallery. I think all these photos, I shot them with my 70-200, that ones that I selected. But my shutter speed was 1/1500, f-stop was at 2.8, and my ISO was at 100. So another safe shot. I know we just went over a bunch of safe shots that are like pre-play, but there are some safe shots that you could do when you are when the play is actually started. A good one is when the quarterback drops back to pass. All right, so this is an example of that right here, because, and this was, I switched over to the 14U team for this game. But when the quarterback's dropping back to pass, but even if he's still mobile, you can get some good shots of him running around in the pocket. But it's a good shot of him looking down the field, trying to pass the ball off. If you can get a shot of him with his arm up, that's usually a good shot. That's another example of a good safe shot. Depending on the lens that you have, if you could get in a little bit closer because you can kind of predict what he's gonna do, this will be a good opportunity to get some good tight shots of him doing an action. For this one, same settings as the last one, 200mm, 1500. If you're a Sony user, I don't know what happened, but a long time ago, I did something to where my settings differ a little bit now. Because it used to be, my settings would be 640, my shutter speeds would be at 640, 800, 1000, 1250, 1600. But now they're like 750, 1000, 1500, 2000, and it's not off. And then like in the lower ones is like 125 versus the lower ones before like 160. I don't know how I set that, but if you know how to fix that, then let me know. So getting on to my last picture, this is going back to the center fix. Now this action in this picture, I really like it, okay? He's going up for the ball, he's snatching it from the defender. But this is very, very good action. And the same thing as earlier, I was trying to use the center fix thing where I would lock in with the center of the photo and just crank it in. Now, for these photos, you can't do this in an actual football game unless you have like one of those really long lenses, like a 200-600, then maybe you can do it depending on where you are on the field. But for this action right here, where I was where the coaches are behind the line of scrimmage. So I was able to point, and once I think this is a long ball. So when the ball is not like a bullet pass, you have time to really lock into the throw because you can see where it's going. Then you can zoom on that area. So for this shot right here is where I was able to really just zoom in on the action and get in a really good, nice and tight shot. The problem with this picture that I don't like is the same thing from earlier. We're having these issues with one area being really blown out and one area being very, it wasn't as dark, but it was still darker than I would like it to be. I think everybody shoots a little bit better when everything is matched well. I need to do a better job of using my histogram when I'm shooting. That could help, but you really have to pay attention to what your camera settings are in these situations. But for my first time shooting 7-on-7 in a while, I think I did a really good job. I was able to knock some of the rust off. I did get some other good pictures. You could see those on my Instagram at Jordan Victorian Photography. 7-on-7 is a good way for players to get experience, and it's really fun to shoot. But that's all I have for today. If you really like this video, make sure you subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Love you all, and I will see you in my next video.